So last night I sat down with my spiritual mentor, Anthony Vatuna. He's a international spiritual medium, he's an advisor, and he is a teacher on spirituality. So I've been working with Anthony for the last couple of, years, I guess, probably a year and a half. I've been seeing him from time to time, and last night I got to record the session to share with you. So watch the video, comment below if you haven't done yet. Please subscribe and share this video. Stay tuned and enjoy.
Wave Beats Music.
So since the last kind of session I with you, I wrote some of the things down that you mentioned. Don't get attached to how many people like you see you likes in terms of on all the social media. Let everything go. Know when to use your power and be yourself and a few other things. So what I've noticed in the last probably a couple of weeks, and very recently with people quite close to me, my colleagues, friends, people that are in my kind of tight circle, they've expressed to me that they kind of they look up to me, and my expectations of myself are really high, and I do a lot. I'm a high performer, and it feels like they're always trying to impress, but they feel very intimidated as well to kind of share some things or to show the vulnerability. And I just thought, this is a conversation I've had with many clients as well, and I'm saying this with the most humblest tone. I guess what I'm asking you is, first of all, is my kind of loudness and vibration, it kind of be, work against me rather than for me? And should I kind of dim that down a way?
No, I mean, listen, I don't know that dimming is the right is the right word for that. You have to be your authentic self. It's through authenticity, that you will make big steps forward in what you're trying to do. If you were to soften yourself too much, it wouldn't be authentic. I mean, we really can't fake it here. So, I wouldn't say that. You should continue to be yourself, but you should also understand that not everyone is going to resonate with your particular message. Just like there are so many different kinds of trainers or so many different kinds of gurus, so many different kinds of teachers, because everyone has a different level of ego, different level of spirituality, let's say, or different lessons. And so it's important that we allow that, okay, maybe you're not the right teacher for everyone. That's okay. I think that's a very high expectation that you would fit for everybody. You could modulate that, a mix of forceful, these are the things that you should do, but also having encouragement and saying that someone's doing a good job, instead of just, hitting them all the time. Especially when you start to move outside of the gym. It's not the same to teach somebody these things. And your expression of vulnerability, you're a accomplished, masculine, bodybuilder type. You being expressive and showing vulnerability to people will allow them to be vulnerable back to you. I mean, this is about being the example. Just as you are in the gym, you could be that verbally, and people will respond to that. They would feel comfortable in speaking to you that. It's an energy too. If we talk about, light. So as you increase your vibrational frequency, you increase your light. People will start speaking to you and telling you things that they wouldn't normally tell people. I have strangers and people walk up to me all the time and tell me very personal things. It's the light that I carry.
Yeah.
It's not the way that I look. It's not anything other than the light that I carry.
I do get that all the time. And the other reason is because I feel that, I ask as well. Like I also ask, like I can just feel like something is not right with this particular person. And I just look them in the eye, because I think, how many people have looked them in the eye today, first of all? I mean, and I pay attention and I treat everybody the same. It doesn't matter what title people claim to have. Everyone is the same and treated with the same respect and attention. And I look them in the eye and I say, "Are you okay?" And then they just express some things to me. They could have just lost their father, or they're just in severe pain, and it's really.
So that's more
Fine.
vibration. It's more vibrational than it is about your personality. So if you're turning your light up really, really bright all the time, people are going to naturally express to you. And if you can show empathy in your response, not sort of a harsh reaction, or get out of here with this nonsense, you have to show them empathy. They're going to continue to share. It becomes productive for them. But you, as an example, you're sharing. I mean, once you share, being the masculine energy that you are, it'll open up the door for sure. It's not an easy thing to do. It takes courage to be vulnerable, but nothing happens without vulnerability. It's like the story of the seed that falls from the tree. It's vulnerable. It could get picked off by a bird, or it could end up drying out in the sunlight. There are so many things. It's vulnerable, until it gets under the soil and starts to grow. That vulnerability, you cannot have growth without vulnerability. You have to be vulnerable at some point. You have to face yourself. You have to face the truth. The vulnerability is going to come up. You start a new job, you're going to have to be vulnerable until you learn the ways of the job. So any kind of endeavor requires vulnerability. It's a big step, sort of in the evolution of us, to allow ourselves to be vulnerable, especially for a man, or men in general. They're not taught that way.
And I'll be the first to say, and I continue to say this all the time, is I'm still finding my way. I'm still just trying to find myself, let alone.
Everybody is. Yeah, everyone
Exactly.
is still finding that.
There's mistakes. There's certain ways I've acted in the past that have been a great lesson. Although I wouldn't kind of remove any of them, because everything is for a reason. But I guess the point I was trying to make as well as people are expressing more to me, I'm able to see and detect emotional stress and upset more than I was. It's literally I can just see it everywhere I go, and I'm able to impact the people as well, and which is, again, like I said, it's very very soothing for me. It gives me a sense of I come to their level, and I can give them empathy, and then I can raise themselves or raise their vibration, and it just makes me feel joyful.
Look, it's good. It's good work if you can get it, but it can also be exhausting to feel everyone's stuff all the time, or everyone's mood all the time. Sometimes I'd rather not know, because I know too much. I'd rather forget. But when I walk up to people, I had that issue where I couldn't even be around people because I could feel so much from them. But it's a brave moment, in spiritual development, when you have a feeling about someone and you're willing to open your mouth and express it to them, even if it sounds off the wall or it's out of character, to ask somebody, "Oh, is something wrong with this?" or to open them up. When you trust in spirit, those feelings that you get, that's leading to your advancement, increasing the information that you would get from source. So, I mean, that's always a great moment when you can be brave enough to actually act on what you're feeling.
So you've always spoke about the path to knowing is lonely, and I understand this because there's not many people you feel like you can open up to, I guess, once you kind of you become more aware. But
because some of the things that you start to see and hear, if you tell everyone about them, they're going to think you need a rubber room,
yeah,
and that you're you've lost your mind, you've gone mad, and that's it. So
No, that's the
there's
next thing I wanted to talk to you about, because, but before that, I mean, was it a part? Because what I started realizing is, you know, first of all, you're very arrogant, not yourself, but, us in general, you become very arrogant, okay? And there's an arrogance to intellect. So when you become more aware and you feel like this path is lonely, I certainly did. I was hearing other people talk about their spiritual findings and so forth. And I was thinking, I didn't want to play myself on a different level, but I was like, I become more arrogant because, well, you don't understand what I'm understanding. So why would I share? I mean, and I was observing myself doing this. I was thinking, wow, you mean the more aware you become in, the arrogance. And then I was thinking, is this ego, or is it just the thought of thinking, well, maybe the path of knowing is lonely? Did you experience this kind of like observation of yourself?
Listen, the fact that you would even observe it in yourself shows that you're not going to go in the way of arrogance and ego, because you're certainly going to go there if you're not in observation of yourself. When I first awakened to, hearing voices and connecting with spirit and all of that, I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do with it? What was the purpose? And we've talked about this, what is the purpose of it all? When the time came to say, okay, I'd like to do this for people, what am I going to call myself? To call myself a spiritual medium, I was really careful because I didn't want to create an identity for my ego. But the fact that I even thought in those terms means I wouldn't do that. And then I would be really humble. Even if I could go into a room and read for people and they would be amazed and walk out of there full of light, I'm still just Anthony. I still have to be just Anthony. And everyone here, no one here is perfect. There is no perfect in being human. There's just no perfection in being human. It's a tough thing to accept because some people say, no, I am perfect. And they really believe it, but they wouldn't be here if they were. They just wouldn't be here.
Anthony, was there a time, because like I said, you clearly, you advanced and this has been happening, it's like second nature to you, but somebody like myself who is just discovering that there's more than I originally saw. I'm seeing things move in front of me. I'm hearing things. I'm aware. I'm not freaked out. I'm acceptance of it. But was it a time where you was like, am I going a little bit crazy? Is this like in my head, or is it real? What is real anymore?
Of course. And I definitely went through all of that. The difference being that I went through it alone, where if I had mentioned, to my ex-wife at the time, she didn't see the thing. She didn't hear the thing. So I just learned to keep it to myself. There were definitely moments where it's pretty dark and you don't know if that's the direction you're supposed to go in, but they were sort of relentless in their what I would say is in spirit's pursuit of me. My spirit guides, other entities that were around, I mean, they were relentless. I could ignore them for only a time. It's like every night when I went to bed, I would hear something chanting next to the bed, and I would ignore it because it was freaking me out. I could hear a man chanting, and I would ignore it night after night. And then it would just get louder, and I would just want to go to sleep and ignore this chanting until one day, the guy's literally laying in the bed with me chanting.
Wow.
I'm like, okay, I guess I can't ignore this, like it's not going to go away. And so It's just like visuals. The visuals in a room, I would see the lights dimming, spirit was trying to talk to me, but nobody else would see it. And, it would just get more and more exaggerated. The lights would flicker on and off to me, but no one else was seeing it. So I'd be like, okay, that was a sign that I was supposed to pay attention to something spiritually. It took a while to get it, but they were relentless. It didn't go away till I acknowledged it. Or if you saw something in the room visually with you're thinking you're seeing it with your eyes, and then you say, well, I don't want to see this. If it's something that's disturbing, you close your eyes. The issue with that is that you would still see it. So there is no sort of escaping that kind of awareness. So at some point, you just have to accept it. I would learn that fear is not the way. Once I went into fear, whatever it is would just become more distorted and more insane. So, fear just wasn't the way to do it. It would be increasing your vibrational frequency, turning your lamp up, and owning the situation instead of falling into fear over it. Fear is really problematic in spiritual development. So I was lucky in that way, because a lot of people go into fear. Children have more of a connection to spirit than an adult would. They're closer to their arrival. They haven't been fully programmed and distracted from it. But the moment that they are made to be afraid of it, it shuts off. A lot of times children will have a spiritual experience. It'll scare them and they will never have another one again until they're in their 30s. It's pretty typical that happens.
It's funny because, the more I'm becoming more aware of certain things, like now, when I meditate, the colors determine emotions. So if I say, show me love, the color goes like purple everywhere, like bright. And then it's literally, if I say, show me, like it comes in colors to me. So everything is more acceptance now. But when I look back, there's been times in my life, like this one particular time, I just thought that it freaked me out. I didn't think it was anything spiritual, and maybe it wasn't, but I'll share that with you now. I was just competed in the Mr. World Championships. Like, I'm fifth in the World Championships. Okay, it was a tough competition. I did 3 competitions in a row. So I did Mr. Wales, Mr. Britain, Mr. World, and it was preparation for probably 6 months of the year. And I remember that it was the night of the show. I just competed, and I was so exhausted. I went home, and we stayed in a hotel, and we went to bed and went to sleep. I was going to sleep, and I could hear, okay, and again, I thought it was in my mind, maybe it was, but I could hear people talking about me, like when you just nod, like going to sleep, and you can hear things in the background. So I was hearing whispers. So I was thinking, pay attention to these whispers. And then after a while, the whispers were getting louder. And then I was like, I was consciously aware. I was like, they're talking about me. So I was listening, and I could hear 2 people talking about me, like, okay, let me sleep. And then after some time, I realized they got louder. It was my voice, 2 of my voices talking about me. And man, it freaked me right out, right? And then all of a sudden, the sound just came in my ear, and it was like, rah, 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 in my ear. Like if it was just
Wow.
but it was like my voice. And like, again, that could have been just, I don't know, maybe it was some sort of delusion, but I remember at the time, it really freaked me out. And looking back.
No, but I don't think that voice, that voice talking about you, it's a good process thing to do, which is to look at, where's the voice coming from and who is it? Who is the one observing you and commenting on you? So it's either the ego, the brain doing it, or it is something much more spiritual. But it's a good thing to be in observation. I think that whatever that was, an observation of you, was a very positive development. But it shouldn't have freaked you out. But it certainly is possible to go into a room, an adjacent building, another place on the planet, and listen to someone else's conversation. That's a full-on thing that happens all the time. And the first time it happened to me, it was disturbing, because it was like I was in a room listening to 2 people talk, and it wasn't a conversation about me. It was a lawyer talking to a defendant about a crime that they had committed, and the lawyer said to the guy that he was in serious trouble. The criminal, or the person who was the defendant, said, I'm willing to go away, for a year if I have to. And the attorney said, no, I'm sorry, you're going to go away for 10 years. And the man started sobbing, and I'm listening to this like I am like right there with them. And I was like, wow, this is really intense, because it was right in the beginning when I never heard much of anything, and to hear a full-on conversation. You realize,
is it in like other people's voices, or is it in your voice?
It was in their voices, not my voices. So I'm just like, okay, I'm listening to other people's conversations. So people say, what it would be like to be a fly on the wall. Well, you could be the fly on the wall. I thought about, I didn't think about, but yesterday I was feeling about meditation and how people often describe it as this inward journey. And it really is an everywhere journey. I mean, anywhere, everywhere. You could be literally anywhere when you meditate, anywhere in the universe or in parallel dimensions. And it's not as inward as people describe it to be, you know.
Well, I went to the first time I went to this meditation group with Carly, my wife. Obviously, she was going to it, and I was new to meditation. And at the end of this meditation, it was in a villa, a lovely couple. We're very good friends with them now. Everyone shares an experience, and everybody went round and shared. And I'm very extroverted, so I like to share a lot. So anyway, it came to me towards the end, you know, everyone was sharing. I felt tingles and vibrations. And I remember sharing my experience of, you know, what I felt, and I felt this energy come through my body like a torus and go out to my top and go circulate and come up. And as I was explaining, you know, the guy was like, Christian, like, when, you know, how long have you been meditating? And I was like, oh no, this is my first time. Well, one of the first times. He started showing me these. He's like, we've been teaching this in our level 2 course for the last 3 weeks. He's like, literally.
Wow.
So in that session, right, what happened to me is I started focusing on my breath, breathing in and breathing out. And the reason why I'm saying this is because you said meditation is inwards, but really it's out. You go in and then you go out, right? That's the way in,
Right.
And then you expand. So I focused in my breath, and then I focused after my breath, because I went deeper. I could feel my beat in my heart. And then I realized that everyone's beat in this room that I was in, which was about 20 people, their heart is beating at the same time, pretty much, you know, give or take. Boom, 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 boom. And then I started being aware that every single living thing on this planet is as a signature beat that almost beats simultaneously with everything else. So in this kind of like inward meditation, I was able to feel connected to every single living being on this planet through the beat of my heart. And from doing that, okay, I was able to realize I can put my conscious awareness into any one of these beats I want.
Oh,
Because
right. That's
I'm
true.
connected to every single beat.
So this is it's a different version of connecting with the oneness. You know, that is the oneness you're connecting with. And, you know, it's a great thing that you would go to a meditation and share your first time out. See, I'm much more introverted. I wouldn't share anything in a context like that. You know, that's great for you that you have that kind of thing. I don't think you should be afraid to share it when you have more of those experiences, but that's a significant thing, because we are all connected, and you could feel what it is like to be the bird, or to be this animal, or to be the tree. You could definitely feel what it's like to be that at any moment, especially during a meditation.
So, like I said to you
More than
before,
that, because you can actually place your consciousness there, you know, and be the tree, or be the leaf, or be the entire planet. I mean, is the other aspect of that, because you could start to feel emotionally the collective joy of the planet, or the collective sadness of the entire planet. And if you get caught in the sadness of it, it's really disturbing to feel that. But it's a choice, you know. You could stay in it, or you could say, I don't want to feel that anymore. It's the difference between, you know, hanging around the morgue or the nursery. You get to feel what energy of the oneness you'd like to feel. But it's all together. So, you know, you have to choose that. You have a lot more choice now. At this point, you could choose to be wherever you'd like. You could choose the experience you'd like to have. I mean, you have like sort of abundance of choices at the moment, from where you've raised your vibration to. I think that you're kind of in this transition where you're trying to figure out where exactly to explore, or what exactly to experience.
Yeah. And
but
again, you're absolutely right. You know, because I feel like wherever I put that energy, it goes. Honestly, I feel so focused at the moment in terms of career driven. I know exactly where we're going. I'm saying to my wife, and just trust me. I know what I'm doing. Just trust me, and she does
Well,
anyway.
you have that part, the destination part you've set. If you set a destination, the universe is going to conspire to take you there, and you're staying focused in it along the way. It's not like you're just
People
leaving
just
it.
turn up, like it's like literally, it's phenomenal. I was like, I could have a conversation with you. Like I was having a conversation with a client the other day. I said, you know what? I want a videographer. We need a videographer. Okay, I said we need somebody to do the video editing work and whatever. Right? About 30 minutes later, I'm sat on my laptop with my head down, with my headphones on, working, and this guy comes up and taps me on the shoulder and goes, "Hi." I say, "Hi." And first, before this, right, he asked me, how much do they charge? And I said, well, sadly enough, in Dubai, it's all to do with culture. Depending on where you're from, will depending on the rate you paid. So, some people are going to charge too much, and someone. And I said, to be honest, I want an Indian photographer at the time. That's what I said, because these guys are very good with tech, and I think we could work. So anyway, 30 minutes later, tap on my shoulder. Okay, this Indian guy. Hi, do you remember me? I said, no, not really. He said, he starts showing me pictures that he took of me on the beach, going back about 3 years ago in Dubai. It wasn't like this with the sunset behind me. And he's a
Right.
photographer. He's like, yeah, I took these pictures. You have been following you on Instagram. I was like, okay. He's like, yeah. I said, what are you doing? He said, oh, I'm a videographer. He works for the gym. I'm like, no way. I was
Wow.
like, man, I said, you looking for a job? And he's like, so anyway, we chatted back and forth. Long story short, this isn't the guy that we just taken on to do the videographer. This was another thing we put up a post, and the guy just turned up. But the point I'm trying to make is, when I'm just thinking something, okay, it literally, and because I'm in trust of what's falling in my place, I just grab it. I just go, great. I see it, like if I'm walking down the street and I get this inclination to kind of reach out and say something to somebody, I just go with it. I think there's a reason why I'm here. There's a reason why I stopped and looked at you, and there's a reason why. So I just go with it, and I think, okay. And then I try to connect the dots after, but this has happened to me like
But that's the
multiple
key,
times.
that's the key to living a synchronistic life is to go along with those feelings and where you find yourself, and that call to say something, that pull to say something. If you're answering that, you will live a more synchronistic life. And we're in a time of heightened manifestation. It is different now than it was 3 or 4 years ago or 2 years ago. Now, and if you're in this path that you're in now, where you're open to spirituality, you're open to possibilities, the manifestation is very, very quick because of the kind of energy that we find ourselves in right now. So it's more than confidence. It's a willingness to project it out there and to say yes. I mean, when something comes and you start to say no, when you become the no person, that becomes your way of living.
Yeah, an opportunity don't keep coming. I've realized this. It's like it comes and it comes, and if you just, from my experience anyway, it stops coming, because what I've learned from spirituality is the same as any relationship with spirits. This is my experience. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but what I experienced. When you have a conversation to somebody, let's say you were going to talk about this topic, which is very, touchy. You gauge what and you drop a few bits, and okay, can I open up a bit more? Can I maybe not? Where are you at? Are you agreeing or are you not? Are you ready for this information? And it's like a game, right? It's the same with anything, you kind of, how far do I go with this? And if that person is climbing with you, you both share this like amazing conversation, and you both back and forth. So what I learned from spirituality and from the spirits that I've been encountering, I guess, is they test me. They'll do things and see how I respond. And if I pay more attention to it, more of it will happen. And if I don't pay too much, I know maybe that wasn't the same for you, like you said, because it got louder. But I noticed with myself is like, if I'm aware of it and I trust it, then, so much more comes. It's like if I'm trusting that relationship more, so I'm getting more
Well,
given
it's
to
the
me.
same. That's right. That's the same in all relationships, that it is built on trust. And so, in spirituality, when you trust, they will bring you more. They are testing, not testing you, but to test you to see if you trust.
Mm.
They're not testing your connection, but does he trust? And if you do trust, then they give you more, and then it gets louder. And in a relationship with anyone, if you can build trust, and then people will do things for you. They'll open to you just like spirit is. So it's the same exact thing.
So obviously, I was connecting. I spoke to my father pretty much. I had a conversation in my mind's eye, and obviously that was like such a discovery for me. As much as I've always like really felt his presence, like every single minute of my waking day, which is that is just too hard for it to be a coincidence. And how can somebody be in your presence all the time? I mean, all the time. So because I've experienced this kind of intense but such bliss experience, because I've had very intense experiences before where I felt like touched by like a spirit in my sleep, and it's made me like go like almost orgasmic, like snap me out of whatever I'm doing. But this was so like joyful. Now, as much as I'm trying to, you know, not demand anything, I guess, and kind of lower my expectations to not have any expectations at all when I'm going into my meditation and when I'm going into my prayer or whatever it may be. Can I call upon things? Because ever since you told me about your experience when you kind of, saw an angel for the first time and another angel, I'm like, I want to see an angel. I mean, can I call upon
Right.
these things?
I think, yeah. So you could have the intention and you can ask, but to have a particular expectation of it, can diminish the possibility. Expectation kind of ruins everything. It just does. It's the way, that's sort of a law of the universe. You're expecting a party to be the greatest party ever, and it never is. It just doesn't live up to that. The expectation, is just becomes problematic. But having an intention, an overall intention that I would like to connect angels, that I'd like to see angels without an attachment to it, without a deep wanting. You're putting it out there like everything else you're manifesting, that you have the intention of seeing an angel, and you will. I mean, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't, so you should just put it out there, but not be attached like I want it so bad. Because
I've asked a few people. So whenever I've seen somebody, like I might see an angel tattoo, or I might see somebody, because the more I get into this, because I'm very open and I'm comfortable. So, I'll say to people, do you believe in angels? Do you believe in spirits? And, and if they do, then great. And if they don't, that's fine. And I just like to have a conversation. So whenever I've said to somebody like this, have you seen an angel? They've gone, you're looking at one. Or, or like, oh yeah, I got two angels for my children or something. But another thing I have to share something with you is brilliant. So the other day, me and my wife were going through something very personal, and it was a time where, I needed to pray. I pray every day, though. I pray every night before bed. I pray every morning. I pray I'm praying to the universe, God, spirit. I just pray. It's mostly thankful prayers, gratitude prayers. Thank you for a brilliant day, and thank you for giving me another opportunity to pray, and all these things. So the other day we were down, like I said, we were going through something very personal, and I wanted to pray. So I just got, and again, I haven't shared this with anybody because I don't really know how people would respond. But anyway, I'll share it. So I was like, I felt the need to go and pray, or the want to go and pray, I guess. So I found myself walking into a mosque, or not a mosque, a prayer room, which is a Muslim kind of room. I'm not Muslim by any means, right? So I walked in,
Right.
obviously I washed my feet and washed myself and my shoes off. And I went into this big room and there was nobody else there. But I was like, well, if there is a God, I mean, God God is above us all, right? And it doesn't matter what you call him or the universe or the divine. I mean, it's everything that's above what we can see, and even what we can, it's everything above us. So I started to, I just closed my eyes, went into like a meditative position, and I started to, what I do is I focus on my breath, and then I increase my vibration by focusing on my breath. And then I go into this kind of like space. And then when I'm in this space, I feel like I can receive any bit of information I want. Any question, it comes to me like this, you know? So I know then that I'm connecting with whatever's there. I don't see things, but I get sometimes imagery, and I also get answers. Like, and these are logical answers and very, very intellectual answers that I wouldn't have come up with myself. So I'm aware that it's not my thinking. So I started connecting and just, again, having a conversation, you know, thank you, and what's this mean, and this. And then I felt, I just felt this presence of like angels and spirits all like forming behind me and surrendering with me. All right. And I stood up, and I knew that there was no person behind me, but I felt like there was about 15 beings just stood like in behind me, and I was leading the path. And wow, what an amazing feeling that was. I was walking out, and I just felt, you know what come to my mind then? Boom, this. The path to knowing is lonely, but once you know, you're connected to everyone and everything. That's what it came to me, because I felt like I didn't feel on my own at all. I was with a collective group of beings.
But that goes back to the question that people ask me, people who live a lonely life. You know, they say that, you know, what is the lesson in me being alone? And the lesson is that you're never alone. I mean, I'm never alone, even though that the knowing that I have, there's a loneliness to knowing. It's only initially. That's so true. I mean, that's really a great thing to come to, which is that it's only true in the beginning. And then, you know, I couldn't be alone if I want to. I'm in the bathroom. I'm like, hey, I'm in the bathroom, you know, leave me alone, you know. So I'm never alone. And that's true. You're never. And if you create this relationship with spirit, with your guides, with the angels, they are always there. Your father, you know, it's interesting that you have this, you're surprised that he could always be with you. I mean, he is always with you because he is a part of you and you're part of him. You're risen up from the same place. You're risen up from and connected to the same place. There is no separation between you and your father. There never was. It's an illusion of separation, because we are so entrenched in this illusion here, that some people call reality. But there is no separation between you and your father. But the moment you think of him, he's right there. The moment you think of him, he pops in, and he's in you feel his presence. And that's because he is. That's just because you know, you're risen up from the same place. People ask, well, how could you read for someone on the other side of the planet, or how could you send healing to someone on the other side of the planet? Because there is no distance. It's an illusion of distance.
Exactly. It's funny because I wrote about this in the book that I wrote, which is going to be out soon. And I discovered this because I worked with, you know, Dawn Appel, who's a good friend of mine now. Met her, like I met yourself, just from wanting to discover more and asking for help. At the time, me and my wife was going through a very struggling time, and I realized how connected to other people's feelings I was. So, you know, and it stemmed back from my childhood, you know, and how I'd always model myself at the time, depending on how I felt like the other person wanted me to be. And I realized that, look, you know, if I don't want to be at the job, at the place, with the person, I need to be able to just decide that for myself, and if not care too much about how they feel, you know, go with what I want to do ultimately. So that's kind of what stemmed on the idea of like, look, I gotta work on this. I must have had an experience at some point in my life that kind of created a trauma from not doing that. Because I'll give you another example. My ex-girlfriend I was with her for 3 years, and she was the love of my life. But I fell out of love with her for the last 6 months I was with her. And I was really faithful to her. I would never cheat on her. But I was neglecting her from the passion that I was once giving her. I just didn't feel the same, and I was coming up with excuses why I didn't want to cuddle. But I felt it was so difficult for me to walk away, knowing how hurt she would be, that I stayed in the relationship. And this is how I've been all my life. And it stemmed back when I did a regression with Dawn. The day when my father died, I was 6 years old. I remember the day like yesterday. I remember how my hair was cut, what I was wearing. And we were walking out to the cemetery, and it was a very big funeral. My father is young, and he died tragically, in a fire. So it was a shock. And he was an artist, he was a poet. So there was a lot of people, at the funeral. It seemed like a lot of people to a 6-year-old anyway. And I remember walking out and looking at my mum. My mum was trying to stop herself from crying because she didn't want me to see her cry. But she's looking at me, and there was tears running down. And then I looked at the person to my right, and there was tears running down. And it seemed every single person I looked at was crying. And we were walking down this corridor, not inside, outside, it felt like hundreds of people. They were all crying, and they were looking at me. And I started thinking, and I remember this because I did a regression as well. I relived an experience of what I went through. And I remember feeling like, why ain't I crying? Everyone's crying, and I felt immense pressure to cry. Okay, but I didn't feel upset. And after some time, I just started crying. Okay, I started crying, and I was crying, but I wasn't upset. I was crying to fit in. And you see, since that time in my life, I was always more than myself. But the reason why I didn't cry, Anthony, I never felt my father left, even at 6 years old. I went to his funeral. I never felt like he left. It wasn't like I'm never going to see him again.
I felt the sort of, when my father passed away, I felt sort of the same in that I thought maybe I should be more upset. And, he was my best friend. I mean, he was someone I would call every single day. Anything that ever happened, I would call my father. But it just felt so complete to me because I had said everything I needed to say, and I had connection to spirituality. So, immediately after his passing, I was already connected back to him. And so for me, it's like he never left. And I completely understand that, no one can tell you how upset to be or not. That's really up to you. I think that was perfect the way it was. He never left you, and you have that awareness that this is an illusion of separation. But it's very hard when someone is in the midst of grief. If someone is not of a higher vibration and they haven't reached that vibration, they're not going to have that awareness. And so for them, it's all grief. There is no room for anything in there. It takes a long time. I mean, they could look, but they can't find it because their vibration's not quite there yet. Everybody could get there, though. Everyone could have that feeling and that peace.
The other problem then that led to me, like personally, because I was aware of that, every single death that came after that, I honestly, it was like I was a robot. I didn't feel anything. And the problem with that is I wasn't relatable. And like I said, I mentioned that me and my wife were going through a tough time. And I must have been, around the time, I think, just after I started speaking to you, I just started speaking to you. I think it was before then. I don't share much about this type of stuff, to be honest. But it was when all this awareness was coming to me. And I was feeling things, and I was confused, and I was hearing things and just picking up my energy and vibration and my intuition. And it came to me like a flood. And me and my wife was going through a very terrible time. And I was going through a bit of a breakdown. And I was not telling anybody, I was just trying to solder it all up, and get on with everything. But I felt like my heart broke. I felt like my heart was ripped out of my chest and I couldn't breathe. And it wasn't a panic attack. It was like I was in pain, physical pain. And I was crying, like my eyes out. I was crying, like, and I remember questioning, like I was talking to whatever, like, why am I? Because the problem was, it was my mind and my gut were just not aligned. And my gut was telling me to do something, but my mind was confused because it was like, what are you doing? Like, but I trusted my intuition so much. I was going along with this. And I remember questioning. And again, I think that's another time I was hearing these voices where, I felt like I talked to God, to be honest, because it was powerful, where I was crying my eyes out and, I was like crying and in pain, and I was like, why? And then I heard, because this will make you stronger. I felt, and I heard that, and all of a sudden it just went, everything just eased and stopped. And what happened is then, because I went through this emotional pain, now I could relate to people when they've had losses or they're grieving, or because up until that point I never experienced it.
That's right. I mean, if I look at my life and things that happened to me, whether it be, the birth of my child with a disability, my father dying, a very long illness and then dying, my divorce, my bankruptcy, when I go through all these things, when I talk to people, the empathy comes from some of that, and my father was a very empathetic figure growing up. So I have his empathy as well. Like, he was a very optimistic force, and so between his optimism and my experiences, I can use them. That's why these things happen. But that breakdown scenario, let me say this, the breakdown scenario of the uncontrollable crying, it comes with this path. Not for everyone, but it does come with this path for a lot of people. And I went through that, where I have these are releases of energy that move us forward. But people on the outside looking at us just think we've had a breakdown, and
like a breakdown and a breakthrough.
Well, yeah. So, but it really is a breakthrough, and a lot of time it's a release. And then I noticed that when I have those kinds of episodes, I find myself in a dark place, and it leads to some kind of release and crying. After that, I have so much more awareness, so much more connection to spirit, that it's worthwhile. But people don't understand a lot of the work. If you're going to be intuitive, if you're going to be connecting with people, a lot of it becomes this management of energies, because you're getting everyone's negativity. Sure, you could feel their joy too, but mostly if you're here doing the work, you're dealing with people's upset and their heavy emotions and all of that. So it becomes about managing the energies, but not having a reaction to a tragedy, or feeling you should react a certain way. I don't know about that. I think that it feels perfect to me. Like, I don't think questioning the past too much about how you reacted, what was the right reaction, and how you got to where you are now. I always find the past very interesting, but we always have to remember that it's gone and that we're in the now moment, and that this is where you're creating in the now moment. I mean, it's interesting because people will need a story like that. People need to know that they might have the same experience or a similar experience, and then they can say, okay, then that wasn't just me being nuts. Somebody else went through it too. But it's really helpful to hear that, to feel that someone else went through the same thing.
I had a message, Anthony, from Spirit, to be honest, and it said that everything in your past, all the breadcrumbs, can lead you to your path to the future. And I thought, wow, what does that mean? And then I had another kind of like imagery. Do you know what? I could show you now. I have in my cupboard there, I have about 12 notepads like this one, right? Where I've been to seminars and I've had, mentorship, and I've always scribbled things down and left there. Okay. And I got this like intuition to spend, and I haven't done it yet, at some point, go back, because once you revisit these things that didn't really make much sense, but you've made note of them. They can be used in the future.
Absolutely. Well, that's that technique, and I know people who do it. I don't do it much. But journaling, if you wrote down everything that happened to you, moments that came up every day, and you did it for 2-3 years, you would start to be able to plot out why and how everything is connected, and connect all the dots. And dates have recurring meanings, and episodes that come up with people. You could look back and see how it all ties together. And there are messages throughout that.
Yeah.
Journaling is great. I highly recommend it.
I
don't have the
journal.
time.
I journal, yeah. I do it every
Yeah.
I do it every Saturday now, because I was like, okay, or I do it whenever I feel like doing it, but every Saturday morning I sit down with my journal. And I started, I might have mentioned this to you, when I first started journaling, I was just writing, meditated, so just whatever comes out. Because I had no intention of sharing it, or it was just therapy.
Right.
But now, over the last couple of weeks, what I've been doing is I've been writing the day, the date, the time, the location, and the topic. Because I know there'll be a point in my life where I'm going to reflect and look back, and I can think, for example, mentoring meeting with Anthony, the discovery of looking back, something like that. And then
right.
I write down, and then I write down something about that. So then in my future self, I go, look what happened with my father when he wrote his diary. I wrote a book sharing some of these pages. This journal could be for my future children to pick up one day and look back and help them
You
get
don't.
through
Yeah,
their.
that's right. You don't really know what that could be for. And I'll get quotes from spirit when I'm doing readings and stuff that are just so extraordinary and would apply to so many different people, that I write them down and put them somewhere. So I have all these quotes that spirit says to people, that are really quite profound and moving. Occasionally I share those. Those come up in readings, that spirit says to people. So I'm like, okay, I better write that down. But the journaling is a great tool. A lot of people use it, and it definitely can point out to you how everything is connected.
Hmm.
And at some point, some people let go of that, but they'll journal for years, and they'll be like, okay, these things are all connected.
I get clients to do it, especially people who are dealing with stress and anger. I say, do this, okay? Because most people will go to the gym, and that's all good. It's great event, but try this. I say, whenever you feel annoyed or stressed, grab a pen and paper and start writing down why you're annoyed and stressed. And what will happen is your emotions will change on the page, because you'll do this. I'm pissed off because this guy said this. Da 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 da. And then you start observing the situation, and you probably
Right.
realize you're overreacting for one, and then you'll see
Right.
more sense in. By the time you finish, if you commit to finishing it, you'll probably be like, yeah, but at the end of the day, he's probably had a bad day and he's probably going through some stuff. Maybe I should call him and say sorry.
That's a great thing. A lot of times I'll tell people that are in a fight with someone, and I'll say, well, go ahead and write the text, write the letter to them, but don't send it. Just write it. And they'll write it all out, and then they'll read it and be like, I'm not sending this. It's like so over the top that what they wanted to say. Once they read it out loud in front of them, they're like, no way I'm sending this. It'll destroy these people. Why would I do that? It's great to get someone to look at themselves. Listen, one of the problems with being human is people do not see themselves. They cannot see themselves as they actually are. They don't want to. They're hearing it, to look at your actions and face all of what you are. It takes a lot of courage, but that sort of forces them to do it if they wrote it down. Or if you could replay, I'm sure if we could rewind the video of the times that we fell into anger, we would laugh at ourselves.
Yeah, it's funny. So I used to record my wife, just like I grabbed the phone, and her expressions, it was like when we look at them back, she'd be sitting there, she'd be like if she's gonna kill me about something I said, and we'd be like,
right.
Wow, look at the anger in that face. And it was only
Yeah.
we overreact too much. But Anthony, thank you very much for your time. Let's connect again.
No.
I think it's 2 weeks time now.
Okay. Well, anytime. Always great to talk to you. And, you know, I do have a message for you. You know, some of what you're talking about are sort of these blessings in disguise, you know, does these happen all the time? And the other thing is I get a sense of you building a community, a real community around yourself. Um, you know, you're worthy and deserving of having the things that come with it. But the building of it is really important. Your spirit guides are like, yeah, create, 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 keep going. You know, so I'm excited for what you're doing. Keep
Yeah, I
going.
need to do it as well. It's where I'm going into my path of just existence. You know, I need to be. I don't know what I need to be. Actually, I don't know if it's a need or want. I just getting pulled into a direction I'm going. But I can feel this like urgency to build this community, like you said. I feel that, so I can learn more about how I can deliver and how I can connect and how I can share and how I can come on to people's level, and then I can bring people to mine. You know, and the more
Right.
people around me,
You know, you're saying I need to be, and really you move that to I am. You just already are whatever it is. So whatever that target is, say I am this already. You know, and I talked to you a few weeks ago. You really had that. You know who you are. You know where you're going, what you want it to look like, and you're taking the steps. It isn't just throwing it out there and hoping. I mean, you're actually taking divine action every day, listening to your intuition. I mean, it's inevitable. You know, there's an inevitability to where you're going.
let's do it.
So, well, thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
Have a great
Thank
night.
you.
I'll talk to you soon.
All right, thank you. Have a nice weekend. Is it weekend? What day is it?
No, it's like the middle of the week.
Tuesday. Have a nice Wednesday.
It's nice to work for yourself. You don't know what day it is. I know.
No. All right, take care. Thank
All
you.
right.
Bye.